The next one-shot story. Captain Kodum's mind wandered as his gaze lazily swung across the bridge's viewport terminals, looking at the vast expanse of space. He quickly shook himself out of his daydreaming though, after all, he had a very important job to focus on. He was the captain of the UPSS Seer, a cruiser of the Union of Polite Specieses, which he personally felt was a silly name, Special Forces. The Fearless. They weren't enhanced in any way to make them actually fearless, but only they had the courage to deal with the danger and horrors of the threats that lurked in the shadows on the fringes of civilized, or as some would say, polite space, of which some were already on board. Contained, of course, they weren't loose, but there was a new one. One that hadn't been encountered before. They hadn't been able to assess if it was a threat yet. Captain Kodum received a ping from his terminal that an analysis of the new entity had been completed. He brought it up. A bipedal creature, with 2 arms. A human, as its kind apparently referred to itself as. Analysis from its point of origin showed it was a member of a system-bound society, having recently advanced from the planet-bound stage. That was good sign to start with, but it didn't mean they weren't a threat. There have been a great number of impolite species that quite unambiguously want to raise the UPS to ashes, and even in one case, an extremely advanced mimic that put up a terrifyingly convincing front of a continent-bound kingdom. The creature was capable of consuming a concerningly wide range of substances. While there were a handful of meat-eating creatures that were part of the UPS, the extent of things it could eat made it seem less like the normal case, and more like the type of the creature that devoured virtually anything that fits in their maw per second. Skimming over the most extreme case, one human was known to have eaten an air transport vehicle several times larger than himself. Made largely out of metal, no less. What took the creature beyond the point of redemption, however, was the examination of their baseline levels of ferocity. Their society included a significant degree of law enforcement. Not informing people about lesser-known laws that had become relevant in a certain circumstance, but to stop people who deliberately broke the rules in a way that caused great suffering to others. Normally, someone getting killed is the result of an accident or mistake, with a scant few exceptions where someone had become homicidally deranged. In those cases, the fearless would have to step in to deal with it and afterwards determine if it was natural or the work of some undiscovered malicious entity. Either way, it was quite rare. For the humans, people getting murdered is a population statistic. They try to stop it, but the fact remained that people killing others is a constant in their society. If the humans were integrated into the UPS, the amount of deaths that would cause it couldn't be allowed. And this didn't even begin to address their policy on nuclear weapons. Here, such things are dark secrets of which only the fearless even know the existence of. Kept as a last resort when all other options are exhausted against a critical threat. And they have so many that they are poised to obliterate their own homeworld at the press of a button. Humanity's nature effortlessly voided all the intentions of peace that they claimed to harbor. Their actions spoke far louder than any words they may have had to say. Humans are a threat. The fearless must either contain or eradicate them. For the safety of the UPS, Captain Kodum saw a request made by one of the researchers appear on his terminal, and he examined it. They wanted to test the humans' combat capabilities. That didn't sound like a great idea, since they wouldn't be able to gauge its offensive strength without endangering the crew. He read further. Oh. They wanted to put it in the Glizrix chamber. Oh. Captain Kodum steadied himself. The insulation on the Glizrix L should mean it couldn't detect his mind from this far off, but still the Glizrix was the other creature on board they had to contain, and he was thankful that another group of fearless had to go through the process of getting it in the cell. They were notoriously hard to kill, and almost impossible to take alive. And worst still, they fed off the fear of all the beings near them. A nebulous shape-shifting beast that assumed nightmarish forms, drawn from the fragments of terror in the back of your mind. The research team wanted to throw the human in with it. They said it would provide an indicator of how a human reacts to extreme threats, and after seeing human history and society, they said it should be found out what depraved nightmare the Glizrix would become that terrified it. They needed to know what something like it feared. Simeon hazily came to and looked at the room he found himself in, which seemed mostly the same as the one before. Would they move me? He idly wondered out loud. His pondering was interrupted by the sound of something behind him. He couldn't quite place what the sound was, though. Is there someone else in the room with me? Are they okay? I hope I can talk to them or something. It's starting to get really lonely being stuck in a metal box for this long. He turned around and he gasped at the animal on the other side of the room. It's reached a formless state, looks like it's not managing to draw any input from anyone else. Put the human in. Done. Looks like he's starting to wake. Let's see how this plays out. Okay, it drew his attention. What's it going to turn into? It seems to be getting smaller. Wonder what small thing terrifies him that wouldn't be worse as a larger form. What is that? That doesn't look threatening. Is he actually afraid of that? Puppy. Simeon nearly squealed and the baby dog bounded towards him. He held his arms out and it leapt into his lap. He energetically stroked its back and it reached up with its paws on his chest to lick at his face with enthusiasm to match. Who's a good boy? You are. Simeon laughed as he coaxed the puppy into rolling over and rubbed its belly. Being stuck in an almost featureless room for a few days had severely worn away at his nerves, and the relief of having something to provide company was wonderful. And the wording in the following POV may be very confusing. I am unapologetic about this. If you still can't make any sense, it refers to itself as this it. This it sensed another mind. In the room, with this it. The other it had just come out of its mind lapse. It was not yet aware of this its existence. There was no trace of this itself in the other its mind, so this it did not form to anything. That needed to change. The other has been alerted to this its presence. It wants to see this its form to decide what it thinks, but it must decide what it thinks for this it to take a form. This it has only traces of anticipation to go with. It has concern for this it. It is lonely, it longs for company, it hopes for this it to be a friend. This it has never seen this happen before. No other its have wanted anything like this. The first one had a form of unknown risk in its mind, not quite aware of this its nature. As this it reacted to that, it then thought of this it as a definite danger. So this it became a definite danger, drawing from the first form it could find in the other its mind, a predator, meant to hunt. The other it confirmed this is what this it was. So this it hunted it. More minds of others came, and while they all had different specific forms, they thought of this it as, they all had the same general idea. One word. Glizrug. This it did not care about the name, but it knew what the name meant. This it was always a threat to them, lethal and merciless. But this new one, it did not think like this. It didn't know what to think of this it, but its thoughts leaned towards hopes of a companion. What form was a companion to the other it? This form has some potential. The form in the other its memory has some names. One is the other its best friend. This it did not care much for names, but this seemed to indicate the right thing to form as. Forming as a smaller type of the creature seemed like a good choice for the other its expectations. This it has this form. The other it sees this it. What does it think? Is this it the other its best friend? I am his best friend. He's so happy to see me. He loves me. I am a being to be loved. So fun to play with him. It tickles. It feels nice. Friend. Your friend. What, that's never happened before. Why is it, huh? It has always responded with violence in all other cases, terrorizing its victims before ending them, or just going straight for the kill when squads attack it. Why is it playing like this? I don't understand. I don't like this. How is the human getting along with that thing? Even other monsters get slaughtered by it. This is bad. What is it going to do? We need to call in a squad to be ready for if something goes wrong. And something is going to go wrong. I just feel it. I can feel this it can feel the other its fear of this it. This it still feels friends love, but other its are nearby. Other its are fearing this it, they are close. This it is dangerous. This it needs to break free to reach the other its. This it cannot break out. The its who trapped this it made it secure, did they not? But the other its outside all fear this it breaking free. So many of them thinking this it could break free. Perhaps this it looks into their minds for a second to find why. This cage is only strong enough to stop this it without thoughts to draw from. It muffles outside its thoughts, so this it cannot use them to break free. But there are a lot of other its. They are very close. And they are all thinking the same thing. That this it can break free. They are trying to not think this thought. But how can they think this it won't break free? If this it couldn't break free, they would not be here. This it can break free, and it will. It will open the door and face the other. Its form becomes more nebulous. This task is not a specific form. The door is open. Their minds are unmuted. The Glizrik is free. Now, what form is the Glizrik taking for this rampage? So many minds, each clamoring out their greatest terrors in their efforts to push those thoughts back. Which one to choose? Crawling, skittering, plated, towering, crushing, swift and eviscerating, perforating and so very venomous. Puppy. What? I want the puppy back. The Glizrik had forgotten about that being what it had called them a minute ago. The Glizrik took note of that voice the most. The Glizrik could not accommodate it. The Glizrik was a being of terror, a thing of nightmares. It could keep the canine aspects, though. Simeon saw the puppy had stopped playing. It looked like it was struggling with itself over something. He watched as its form became more indistinct. What was happening? He heard traces of sound outside the cells. The noises of military equipment and alien voices outside, on the side of a blast door that, save for some hairline seams, looked just like the rest of the room's walls. The puppy wasn't remotely recognizable as such anymore. An indistinct haze of purple that had grown larger than him, it reached to the door. The door crumpled at the seam and was wrenched open, revealing a large number of alien soldiers waiting. Simeon felt the fear in the atmosphere. He saw the thing as it touched briefly upon vague outlines of various insidious shapes. It's taking the form people think of it as. He realized with a start. For me, he ended up as a puppy, for them. Puppy. He shouted, I want the puppy back. Maybe he could turn it back into something less dangerous. He watched as it returned to a quadrupedal form, but it wasn't the same. It was twice his height, its mouth bristled with teeth the length of his forearm, and its eyes seemed to be alight with flames. The only word he had to describe it was hellhound. He didn't know what to think. The crack of a weapon firing caught the attention of almost everyone present. It didn't get Simeon's though. He was more distracted by the sharp piercing pain through his stomach. The fight was imminent, so the shot fired early by a nervous trooper wasn't exactly frowned upon. The target made sense, too. The human had somehow befriended with the Glizrik, and they weren't interested in having any unpleasant surprises. Who knows what one who could control the Glizrik's form like that could do. But a dead being has no thoughts for that monstrosity to use. The Glizrik saw the being beside him start seeping red, its footing grew unsteady. The Glizrik smelled fear. Was it starting to think of him the same as the others did? The being beside the Glizrik turned its eyes from its wound to the Glizrik. There was sadness, there was regret. Its thoughts of the Glizrik were still of the puppy. What were the other emotions, then? It feared losing the Glizrik. It was sad to not be able to have more times like when the Glizrik had been a puppy. It regretted having put itself in danger. For what reason? The Glizrik could feel that its emotions were driven by companionship over the bond it had formed so quickly with the Glizrik. They had a bond. The Glizrik, he had to do something, right? What could he do? He had to save them. He could do nothing. He did not heal. Not even his friend thought he healed. The other mind's thoughts of the friend were the same as their thoughts of the Glizrik. The Fearless watched as the Glizrik turned on the human in his last moments. It seems his facade of control had broken, and the Glizrik sensed his fear now. Its form became that nebulous purple haze for a second, before a tendril snaked out and enveloped the human. His surprised yelp was cut off, and the troops refocused on the Glizrik as it separated from the haze that swallowed the human and reformed into that beast with burning eyes. But the haze didn't dissipate. That wasn't right. Glizriks couldn't control two severed pieces of themselves, and this one definitely hadn't been in a reproductive state to multiply its consciousness. The haze couldn't maintain itself without something to guide it. It would have to dissipate soon. But it did the opposite. It started to form into a shape. The human was back. But now they were clad head to toe in a strange suit of armor. The thick visor, with only a hint of the face behind it, held a dreadful malevolence. The creature, becoming an apparent symbiote with a Glizrik, had broken their discipline, and the thoughts of their imminent demise ran rampant. I'm alive. The shot in the gut barely even hurts. They're terrified. They forgot about the wound I took. It's like I'm not even injured. It saved me. It somehow managed to split a part of itself and allowed me to wield it. Bond with it. That makes me also like it. It drew inspiration from my mind for this form, this suit though. So what did it do? I'm wearing armor of some kind, looks quite bulky, not sure what's with the color, seems to clash with the hellhound thing he's got, oh my. Well, it definitely clashes with the hellhound form for a couple of reasons. The monstrous wolf turned from its companion to face the fearless. The human raised his hand to stroke the side of its neck and spoke. Save for the panicked cries of terror that would swiftly follow, it was the last words the squad ever heard. The only thing they fear is us. Author's name and the link to original text in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video. And please join our channel.